Hey everyone. In this little talk, we're going to go over the week one discussion forum review and your responses to it. I really enjoyed reading your responses, getting to know some of the things that you know about the Puritans, some of the things you don't know about the Puritans. You guys did a great job, and everybody that posted their initial response and a response to a classmate received full credit for the assignment. So well done with that. But I want to continue to make this forum better as we go. I want you guys to improve in terms of what you're doing, because I don't want this forum to just be some sort of half-assed requirement that you feel like you need to complete just to pass this class. I want this forum to be a resource for you guys to help you prepare for your unit assessments and eventually for the essays that you're going to write in this class. So I'm going to talk about some of the things you guys can do to not only personally improve your posts, but also as an entire class, help make this a more useful resource that we're going to have. Okay, first thing that we've got down in here, grammar and punctuation. This is a university class, and you are completing a university requirement. So let's approach it with that in terms of grammar and punctuation. Big issue I repeatedly saw in posts, for example, was just problems with punctuation. Some of you weren't capitalizing Puritan, some of you weren't capitalizing God, some of you weren't capitalizing Bible. These are all proper nouns, you know. These get capitalized. Now, it's okay sometimes when we don't know the rules in terms of grammar and punctuation like this. I find myself sometimes pondering and questioning, should I do this? Should I capitalize that? That's okay. What's not okay is then not trying to find out what you're supposed to do. So if you have an inkling as you're using a word that, should this be capitalized? Google it. It'll take 10 seconds. So let's try and do a little better with that. So this starts to approach university level work instead of junior high work, in which, matters of punctuation really are more junior high than they are university at this point. Okay. Your titles. Okay. None of this criticism I'm laying on you guys has to do with week one. Okay. Week one was fine. Everybody that did it got full credit. Again, I'm talking about how can we make this better as we go on. One of the things I would like to see is more descriptive titles. Week one titles, there was a lot of Puritans. There was a lot of week one discussion. Sometimes it was your name, which maybe some other professors want you to do. What I would like you to do is more accurately describe what you are talking about. Yes, you're talking about the Puritans, but that's what we're going to be talking about for 4 weeks. Give us something better, okay? Some of you didn't know much about the Puritans, and you admitted that, and I really appreciated you being honest in admitting that. So put that in your title, instead of saying Puritans, say something like clueless, or maybe I had a bad history teacher, or maybe drawing a blank. So when a fellow student goes on to click they have some sense of maybe what you're talking about, or at least it makes them intrigued. Clueless. Wow, what does she mean clueless? I kind of want to read that. Instead of just a generic week one discussion or Puritans, do something to describe it. Some of you, fair number of you, talked about Nathaniel Hawthorne and reading The Scarlet Letter. Some of you talked about reading Arthur Miller and The Crucible. Okay, put that in your title. The Crucible. Scarlet Letter. Give your fellow classmates some idea what you're going to talk about instead of just a really boring generic title as we go on. Okay. Length. Let's talk about length. Length was okay. Some of you that were giving me sort of one sentence responses were on the borderline. You got credit and it was okay for week 1, but here's one of the tendencies that happen with students and classes as they go on. As students, some students, certainly not all of you, as some students continue in the course and they're receiving credit for doing assignments, some students start to slack off a bit, get less attentive, try to see if they could do even less work and still receive credit. So one of my fears is those one sentence responses are going to get shorter and shorter, and I'm going to start getting a few word responses. That's not going to be okay. All right. So general rule of thumb for you to think about. If you're going to only give me or your classmate one sentence in terms of response, it better be a fairly meaty sentence, and there better be some quality opinion or information you're sharing in that. What I'm not going to want in the future is responses to classmates that's just, oh, I totally agree, and I was thinking the same thing, period, end of sentence. Do better than that. Describe more exactly what it is you're agreeing with, or the way in which you like the way your classmate responded to that. Okay. So be careful about length. If I start getting some really short responses, some real few word responses, I'll just start taking points off from students, and then you'll know this isn't okay. And I'd just rather you guys listen to me and take this to heart, and make sure you're giving me 2-3 sentences, something like that, if need be. Okay. One of the things I was happy about, I wasn't surprised by it, but I was really happy about, is how cordial you were with each other. Nobody was attacking people. Nobody was trolling people. Again, I'm not surprised by that, but I'm always worried that whenever I start a new class with a discussion forum, I'm like, oh, I hope everybody's cool. I hope I don't have to, send some emails to a kid to tell them to be more respectful in what they're posting, particularly to classmates. We didn't have any of that, and I was thrilled with that. However, you know what else I didn't get? Off the top of my head, I can't remember a single one of you challenging or correcting a classmate for something that they said. And going on, as we now are going to start, and my questions are going to often be more geared to what we're actually learning. Sometimes your fellow classmates are going to get stuff wrong. They just are. And one of the things that will be helpful in this forum is if fellow students help that student by politely correcting them. Okay? If a fellow student gets something wrong, pointing out that they're wrong is not being mean or disrespectful to that student. It's helping that student. If that student is getting stuff wrong, they're going to have trouble in unit assessments. They might mess up significant parts of their essays because they're wrong. So what I would like to see with some of you, a bunch of you got stuff wrong in your week 1 post about the Puritans. And that's okay, because this was the starting point. I was asking you, what did you know? And a lot of you admitted, not very much. But nonetheless, people were getting stuff wrong. All right? And instead of allowing your fellow student to wallow in ignorance, you want to help them out and point out that their impression of something might be incorrect. Now, you can do this in really polite and sort of humble ways. Somebody gets something wrong in the forum and you know it's wrong. you can respond to that student and say, that's interesting. I had a slightly different reading from what I've been learning in class, dot, 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 dot. You are, on the one hand, acknowledging something a student said was interesting. You're making it clear that your knowledge might be contingent and, maybe you're wrong, but you're also pointing out that there's a different interpretation. Okay. There are ways of doing this. But you want to not only help that fellow student that's posting, that's maybe getting something wrong, but you want to also help other students that are going to read that forum post and might be led astray because that information was incorrect. Okay? As you get older and as you get into the real world out here, more than just in school, there are going to be occasions, lots of occasions, where you're going to need to correct people. You're going to need to find polite ways to let them know, you're wrong about this, and here is the right answer. This forum is a place for us to work and develop that skill and correct people with a generous heart, with a kind heart, but nonetheless, correct them. The world needs more people getting stuff right. And that's a big part of what we're learning in university. We're learning how to get stuff right. And so I really want to encourage you to help your classmates by correcting them. Not in petty stuff, not in trivial stuff, not in ways that try to make you seem like some sort of smart aleck and demean and hurt the feelings of somebody. But like I said, with a kind and generous heart, inform that fellow student of the possibility they might be wrong about something and then help correct them in that, okay? I'd like to see more of that as we go on here. Finally, one of the things I was struck by, and I'm always struck by it, so it's not your particular class that does this more. But some of you admitted to having very limited knowledge of the Puritans. Some of you were basing your comments solely on that little clip from an episode of The Simpsons, which was fine. That's sort of what I put it there, put it on there for you. However, with your slight knowledge, you went on to make grand, totalizing characterizations of the Puritans as if you knew a lot about the Puritans. You don't. That you're going to know a lot more in a few more weeks. You're going to know a lot about the Puritans, but in the beginning, you don't. So therefore, it was somewhat out of place for you guys to say, on very limited knowledge, that the Puritans were 100% this, they were 100% that. This society that existed for over 150 years, that contained tens of thousands of, eventually over 100,000 people, were 100% this. It was a bit off base. The best posts to the forum were often filled with more contingent opinion. I don't know much about the Puritans, but my impression of them seems to be they might have been such, 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 such. Notice how there was qualifying. I don't know much, maybe, my impression of them. Look, if you don't know much, admit you don't know much, and then make your assertions limited to this limited amount that you know, right? Some of you took a 2-minute clip from a cartoon comedy show and you ran wild with it. Homer on The Simpsons works in a nuclear factory. It's as if you went into a physics class and said, well, hey, I've watched a little bit of The Simpsons, so I know about a lot about nuclear theory because Homer works in there. Look, The Simpsons was a comedy show. Okay. Arthur Miller, who wrote The Crucible that some of you referred to, Arthur Miller was a playwright. He was creating a metaphor between the Salem witch trials in 1692 and the mid 20th century Red Scare, the accusations of communism that were happening in mid 20th century America. Okay, Nathaniel Hawthorne was burdened by the fact that he had ancestors that lived in Salem and participated in the Salem witch trial. So when he wrote the Scarlet Letter, it was a work of literature. The Simpsons is fiction. The Crucible was fiction. The Scarlet Letter were fiction. We're interested in historical truths. We're interested in historical reality. Okay. I start with that Simpsons clip precisely because that's where so many of us start when we learn about the Puritans. We hear about witch trials. Witch trials were not that common in Puritan New England. Half of all people that were executed in over 150 years in Massachusetts and Connecticut for witchcraft happened in that one town during that one time in Salem, Massachusetts. There were no executions in the 100-year history of Denham that we are studying right now for witchcraft. It's a kind of stereotype, which we hear a lot about, and that's why I start with the Simpsons clip, but we're going to go beyond just characterizing Puritan experience like that. So I'd like you guys a little more humble when you don't know things, and resist the temptation to make broad characterizations on limited amounts of knowledge. Okay? Until you know more. All right? Hold off. Okay? And when you do make these characterizations, make sure you're acknowledging, like, it seems to me, from my limited knowledge, from what I've learned at this point, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe as I learn more, I'll change my opinion about this. But it seems like, just be a little more humble as you approach this. All right. Okay, that's it. You guys did a great job. I'll do this every week, talking about the previous week's forum. Previous or future talks like this will probably be a bit shorter than what we did now, because I'm laying out some of the ground rules, and so hopefully I won't have to repeat some of this, and I'll just be able to talk more. Specifically, one of the things I will do in future ones is when I see you guys getting some stuff wrong as a class, I'll try and come here in one place and correct some of those, so that we you don't get led astray. But again, hopefully some of you guys will be correcting that stuff in the forum as you go. Okay, so good job, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.